coming on the air with time running out to leave Florida before Hurricane Ian hits as it's slamming Cuba as a Category 3 storm. We'll take you live to Tampa and Sarasota, which could now get a direct hit. Plus, the effect it's even having here in Washington on the January 6th committee. Plus, new in the last couple hours, the first significant legal challenge to the president's plan to forgive student loan debt. Why the White House is so confident that won't make a difference. And your box of cereal set to get some traffic light vibes coming soon as the Biden administration looks to make the biggest moves in the fight against obesity in decades. What it means for the food labels you probably look at all the time. Plus, an NBC News exclusive you will only see here. Our team resurfacing comments from Pennsylvania's Republican candidate for governor saying he believes some women should be charged with murder if they get an abortion. We've got that news and the new fallout ahead. As we speak, there are no more flights in the Tampa area. The big airports are now shut down to get ready for this storm, which is expected to hit Florida by tomorrow night. More than 2.5 million people are being told to leave. And if you live in one of these counties, you may have evacuation orders already. At the bottom, this is a website. If you have family in Florida, floridadisaster.org/knowyourzone, direct them there. We now think the storm is expected to hit somewhere near Sarasota, with President Biden out with a new warning.
Forecasts can change, but for now, the experts say this could be a very severe hurricane, life-threatening and devastating in its impact.
It comes as we're getting some pretty bananas satellite video of Ian from NOAA. Look at this. That's not glitching, right? The video is not glitching. These are all the thunderstorms inside the hurricane. Look at that as it is churning its way now towards Florida. And you know the state is starting to feel it. Check it out. This is Key West. You can see the waves picking up, the wind. People there are being told to stay inside now. And look at these ominous cloudy skies over Tampa, getting ready to shut off power to parts of its downtown there. You've got sandbags at capacity, highways just packed with people getting out. Other states are getting ready, too. You got Georgia's governor declaring a state of emergency because of how windy it's getting. As we're getting our first look at what this storm can actually do from Cuba. You see this? This is Ian making landfall today as a Category 3 storm. The destruction is very visible, very obvious, very scary. We're going to get the forecast from Bill Cairns in just a second, but I want to start on the ground with Carrie Sanders on Anna Maria Island just north of Sarasota and Ellison Barber in Tampa for us. Carrie, Sarasota is starting to shut off water to some of the sort of outer islands there. What are they doing to keep people safe, to keep infrastructure safe?
Well, the barrier islands in this area to the south are evacuated. I mean, there's a few people that are lingering around. Look, let's understand what the threat is here, because everybody's always thinking about the wind, which, of course, is incredibly dangerous. But there's also something called storm surge. So I'm going to just wander down here for a second and put my feet in the water, because this water here has... Well, the Gulf of Mexico in some places is 89 degrees. And so when the water's warm like that, that is actually like gasoline to a fire. It is the high octane that gives the hurricane the power it needs to get more furious. Now, the Gulf of Mexico here, unlike the east coast of Florida where the shelf drops off, here it just goes like that, which means as the water blows in, you've got the hurricane coming. You've got 100-plus-mile-an-hour winds. If you were to take like a small bucket or maybe a tub that a little child would use, and you put just a little bit of water in it and had the kids blow at one end, they'd move the water. That's what the hurricane's doing. It's pushing the water. And so it builds up, and it's predicted it could be as high as 12 feet. Let's use 10 feet as an example. We're at sea level. I'm 5'5". That's twice as tall as I am. That's a lot of water that comes rushing in. Water is powerful. There is nothing to stop it. It comes forward and it hits everything in its path. So the real concern is obviously the wind, the flying debris, and then you have the storm surge. And we do know more people die in a hurricane from the water than from all the debris flying around.
That's such a good point. Carrie, you are sort of in the bullseye of the storm right now, at least of that forecast. Ellison, it was Tampa. The track has shifted a bit. Is that changing anything about how Tampa is getting ready for this storm?
No, not at all. And I mean, Kerry kind of expertly explained why in the way that only Kerry Sanders can so magnificently do. And it has to do with the storm surge and the conditions that exist on this side of Florida in the Gulf. The fact that you have this shelf, if you will, where the water can build up and create all of this storm surge. So even this weekend, you had the acting director of the National Hurricane Center saying, look, it's not just about a direct hit. When we're talking about storm surge, it goes beyond that. So even though maybe Tampa looks like it's not going to be the eye of the hurricane, the quote unquote direct hit, that does not mean that they're safe. That does not mean that they're at a lesser risk for these high levels of storm surge. They're still about the same here. So the posture from officials is pretty much exactly the same as we saw it before. You still have in this county alone 300,000 people under mandatory evacuation orders, and people that we've seen, people we've spoken to today, they seem to still be keeping the same posture as well, because they seem to understand that this is still a very serious threat to the Tampa area. You always hope for better, but you have to expect the worst, and that's really what officials want residents to do. Hallie?
You've got a plan for it, and I'm glad to hear you say that, Ellison, because as you and Kerry both know, complacency is a potential concern here, right? Florida gets hit by storms, and there are some folks who I imagine would say, hey, we're used to this kind of thing. Our friend and colleague Peter Alexander put this exact question to the FEMA administrator today, the idea of complacency in Florida. Listen to this.
I do have concerns about complacency. We're talking about impacts in a part of Florida that hasn't seen a major direct impact in nearly 100 years.
Kerry, where you are in Sarasota now, are people understanding that the risk level has now spiked a bit? Do they get how dangerous this could be?
They do, and, you know, when she's talking about a direct hit in 100 years, she's talking about Tampa Bay. As you come further south, where I am, and then you go even a little bit further south, down to Punta Gorda, to Charlotte Harbor, that area. It was 2004, Category 4, Charlie came through here. So the folks here do know this. I think what the big thing to recognize here is that you know, a lot of new people have come to Florida. We've had this really remarkable period, I think 4 years without a hurricane hitting Florida. And during the pandemic, people relocated, especially from New York, from Boston, from Chicago. Very popular to come here to the West Coast, in part because, well, look at this. I mean, this beautiful sand. The beaches are just wonderful here. People decided that they wanted to move out of there, but they do not know what a hurricane is. And if you've never been through a hurricane and you're from the Northeast or maybe from Chicago, you might think, okay, I know what a blizzard is. So very different. And so it's really going to be kind of like a primer for a lot of people to go through this. And, you know, unless you have a veteran with you or somebody who's been through it, or you're really paying attention to what the officials are saying you should do, you could find yourself in trouble. And the one thing that the officials always say is, look, at the last minute, you can't pick your phone up and dial 911 for help. Nobody can get to you. When the hurricane is at full force, if you decided to do something that you thought was going to be okay, you can't get help. And I'm always struck by the people who think that they want to stay at their homes so that they can batten down the hatches, literally hold a door, hold a window. It doesn't work that way. Mother Nature is so much stronger. I don't care whether you can bench lift, you know, a car. You cannot stop it.
It's such a good point, Kerry. Ellison, I know you're talking to people who, to Kerry's point, are for the first time sometimes clearing out now, who have not experienced something like this and who are getting to safety.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked to a lot of people who say, hey, I'm a Floridian. I've been through this, not going anywhere, not scared. Whether or not that is the right decision or not, depending on where they live, a lot of officials say it is the wrong choice. But of course, we have run into some of those people. But one thing that has sort of been surprising to me in a positive way, I think a lot of officials especially would tell you, is the amount of people that we have encountered who say, oh, I'm from here. I have lived here for more than a decade. I've never evacuated before, but this time I will. Listen.
I never left before, but they're showing that this one's moving kind of slow.
So this one feels different.
Yes.
And so some of the evacuation orders in this county went into effect yesterday afternoon, but earlier this morning and still a little bit now, you had officials in this county still encouraging people, saying time has not entirely run out for you to evacuate, get somewhere higher, move a little more inland and try and ride this out somewhere else. There are shelters in this county and others that are open for people who might not be able to afford to go further or might not have a home to stay further. But a lot of people do seem to be heeding that advice so far, Hallie.
And let me just say, because you two are going to be in the thick of it for the next 48 hours, your safety at this company is the top priority. I want to make sure our viewers understand that we're not keeping you in these risky positions. You know what you need to do to stay safe, and that's super important. We are glad to have you there. We obviously want you both to stay safe. Carrie, Ellison, really appreciate you. Bill Cairns now has a forecast. Bill, 24 hours ago on this show, we talked about how this thing was going to move slow and probably hit as a Category 1. Now we think it's going to hit as a Category 3.
It's changed in the last 24 hours. And if you rewind the tape, I think I remember saying worst case scenario would be if this storm was to make landfall more to the south and to the east, because then it wouldn't have time to weaken. If it was going to head up towards Tampa, had more time to weaken, or the Big Bend area, even more time to weaken. Well, the absolute worst case scenario as far as intensity and damage potential happened during the day today. That's been good news for Tampa. Horrendous news for your interest around the Fort Myers area, Captiva, Sanibel Island, Cape Coral, Punta Gorda, Port Charlotte, that Englewood, Venice, that whole area. So let me get into it. Here's the storm coming onto the radar here. Here's Key West. You can see the rain showers already starting around Fort Myers. We've already had some tornado warnings during the day in South Florida, and that'll be a threat tomorrow, too, and as we go into Thursday. Already up to 60-mile-per-hour winds in Key West. So if you're in the Keys, you know there's a hurricane nearby. That's probably about the max winds we're going to have, 60 to 70. I don't know if we're going to get any hurricane gusts, but things in Key West are built for this, so they shouldn't have too much damage there. But tomorrow morning, you're going to wake up to those winds in southwest Florida. So here's the latest update. Just got this in from the Hurricane Center. It's not quite a Category 4 yet, but it's not that far away. Only has to get up to 130 to be a Category 4. And you can see it looks like a buzzsaw. When it gets that appearance, you're just like, you know, as a meteorologist, my heart just kind of sinks, because I know what storms that look like this, I know what they're about to do. And unfortunately, a multi-billion-dollar weather disaster is heading to southwest Florida. So here's the new forecast track. They're now making landfall as a Category 4. It was a 3, so it's either going to be a really strong 3 or a lower-end 4. The damage potential is pretty much the same thing. And notice Tampa's all the way up here. St. Petersburg's all the way up here. Sarasota now is even on the south side. Still could go through the eye, but the strongest right quadrant where the worst storm surge flooding would be, this is exactly where Charlie hit in 2004 as a Category 4. They were about to get hit in the same exact areas twice from a Category 4 in 18 years. I mean, that's just wild. Tampa's gone 100 years and hasn't been hit. Then we take it as a hurricane during the day on Thursday, weakens to a tropical storm as we go throughout during the day Thursday. So still wind damage all the way up to Disney and the theme parks, Universal, into the Orlando area. And of course, Hallie, water kills the most, as Carrie was saying, and Ellison too. 12-foot storm surge is possible, especially in Charlotte Bay here. My heart goes for those people. They went through it. Hopefully they're all getting out of the way and making their preparations. Power will likely be out maybe 1-2 weeks at least in the hardest hit areas, maybe 3 weeks. So if anyone's still thinking in that area, should I leave or shouldn't, you need to go.
It's the worst kind of deja vu. Bill Cairns, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Bill and Ellison and Carrie have talked about the impacts in Florida. There's a different kind of impact right where I am in Washington, and that is because this hurricane has postponed that highly anticipated, maybe final, January 6th committee public hearing here in D.C. We heard this confirmed today, late this afternoon, actually, from committee members, Democrat Benny Thompson, the chair, Republican Liz Cheney, the vice chair, saying because of Ian bearing down on parts of Florida, they've postponed the proceedings. They add that the investigation goes forward. They're going to soon announce a date when this will pick back up. It'll still happen then. And when it does, the committee is likely to show clips from a new documentary of former Trump advisor Roger Stone, filmed in the weeks and months before the 2020 election. I want to bring in now Ali Vitale. And Ali, talk to us about the timeline here, right? Because we've talked a lot about how if the Democrats lose the House of Representatives in the midterms in November, this Congress's term ends at the end of the year, right? New Congress comes in early 2023. Yeah. And if Republicans are in control, this committee's toast, okay? There are still some threads to button all this up.
Still some threads to button up, and the committee is well aware both of the timeline and the lingering questions here. So the fact that they're postponing this hearing doesn't deter their eventual goal, which is shifting into the mindset of getting this final report done. Because even if they're shut down, this is the document that would really outlast all of their work. This would be the final record of what they're producing. And so that's going to come sometime towards the end of the year. But some of the questions they still have to answer are, what are they going to do about the lawmakers who have been subpoenaed subpoenaed, but who are pretending that they haven't been. They're ignoring them. What are they going to do about Trump and Pence? Are they going to ask them to come in? When are they going to talk to Ginny Thomas? I have to admit, the first thing that I thought of when the committee postponed the hearing this week was, as they try to actively figure out when they're going to postpone it, will it come at a point where they've already had the chance to talk to Ginny Thomas so we can get those updates? All of that now an open question, as we have an extra potentially week or more for them to figure out when they're going to become public again.
What's also been interesting about this is it had been, to a degree, relatively compared to the hearings this summer, somewhat shrouded in mystery, right? Over the summer hearings, there was a very clear theme and narrative and storyline. We don't have it with this next hearing, whenever it's going to be. We do have a bit of a hint, maybe a clue, in the form of these clips of Roger Stone from this documentary, with Stone predicting there's going to be violence, that allies will not accept the election results. How does this fit into that broader narrative?
Colorful from Roger Stone there, but it fits because, as always, it fits because we know that the committee has done a lot of work to try to speak to the mindset in the larger Trump orbit in the days and weeks even before Election Day. What these clips make clear is that Roger Stone was actively thinking about declaring victory regardless of whether or not they won, which is ultimately what we saw President Donald Trump do on election night, and of course in the subsequent weeks after, even after it became clear that he had lost the election. I think the other thing, though, that this hearing, which is now postponed, so whenever we get to it, we get to it. The other thing that makes it different is the fact that all the other hearings were part of a clear chronology. They were bringing us up to the day in question, January 6th. Now the question that I have, and what I was sort of thinking would happen tomorrow and now will eventually happen in the future, is whether or not they try to show that this is still a palpable threat. It's something that they've said throughout these hearings, but now this is an opportunity, now that they've gotten past that January 6th day in the timeline, to talk about what happened after. They've talked with former cabinet secretaries. They've talked with former members of the Trump inner circle. Are they able to tease out what those conversations were after the 6th and connect them to the conversation that Donald Trump is still having in real time on the campaign trail right now?
And the critical backdrop, too, this new Monmouth polling showing that about a third of Americans, 6 in 10 Republicans, still believe former President Trump's election fraud lies. That is the context here for these committees hearings publicly. Ali Vitale, live on the Hill, juggling a lot this afternoon. Ali, thank you so much. Appreciate it. As we talk about January 6th and what's happening here in D.C., a big case is beginning today. 10 potential jurors have qualified so far to be part of one of the highest profile prosecutions yet in connection to what happened at the Capitol, the insurrection. Jury selection for the 5 defendants you see on your screen here started today in the trial for Oath Keepers leader Stewart Rhodes and 4 other members of that group. It's a right-wing militia, basically. They're facing multiple charges for their role in the riot. The biggest one, seditious conspiracy. In other words, trying to overthrow the government by force. Everybody that you just saw has pleaded not guilty to the charges. And the word high stakes, the words high stakes get tossed around a lot. This really is, right? Because this trial is different, in particular for the DOJ, because of this sedition charge here. We don't see the government use it a lot. They haven't used it a lot in recent history. And when they have used it, they haven't always had success. Ryan Riley is outside the courthouse. Speak to that broader significance here, Ryan, because this trial isn't like the others. It's different.
That's right. Yeah. And I mean, you know, like you said, they haven't used it very often, and that's because it's a high burden to reach. But if you're going to go for a seditious conspiracy charge, gosh, trying to attack the U.S. Capitol and install Donald Trump for a second term certainly sounds like something that would meet the definition. So if you're not going to use it here, it's kind of like, when would you use it? So that's basically what prosecutors are going to try to lay out here, that there is this coordinated plan. The Oath Keepers had planned to set up these quick reaction forces with guns outside of D.C. They used a hotel in suburban Virginia, for example, and they were keeping those guns there in case in case Donald Trump invoked the Insurrection Act or basically called them up to duty. Some of the most key moments and questions that I sort of have is there was this phone call that one of these Oath Keepers testified about, where Stewart Rhodes is in a hotel room right near the Capitol on the night of January 6th. He gets in touch with a Trump intermediary and is trying to basically trying to speak directly with Donald Trump himself, and encourages that person to tell the president to basically call up militias like the Oath Keepers to come in and help him keep power and keep a second term, Hallie.
Then talk through the strategy here for both the prosecution but also for the defense, because there's a lot on the line for these defendants. It's a maximum sentence, seditious conspiracy if they're convicted of 20 years in prison. How is each side going to make the case?
The defense, I think is basically going to say that, hey, they tried to do this within the legal bounds. I think also Stuart Rhodes is going to basically contend that he didn't actually tell any of these individuals who did go inside the Capitol to do so, that they sort of did that on their own. They weren't instructed to do that in any way. Basically, that they were sort of on standby and, waiting in the wings, essentially, for Donald Trump to call them up and step in. So that's essentially what the defense strategy is going to be here, say, hey, we are sort of complying with the law. There's also a component of this which is really interesting, where they're going to really potentially try to rely on a advice of counsel. They're basically going to say that, hey, there was this woman, Kelly Sorrell, who is the general counsel for the Oath Keeper, who was advising us on all of this. Kelly Sorrell was charged earlier this year, and as we just reported last night, she was actually in touch with Andrew Giuliani, the son of Rudy Giuliani, who was a White House aide in November of 2020 around some of those election challenges, because she was playing a dual role, not only as the Oath Keepers general counsel, but also as a volunteer for Lawyers for Trump. So if you're drawing a Venn diagram, Kelly Sorrell is sort of directly at the middle of that in terms of the overlap between the Trump world and the Oath Keepers. Haley.
Ryan Riley, outside the courthouse here in Washington. Thanks for staying on top of this one, Ryan. The Biden administration is now facing the first big lawsuit against the president's student loan debt forgiveness program, that would cancel a whole bunch of debt for a whole bunch of people in this country. The lawsuit coming from an Indiana-based lawyer who works for a conservative-leaning law firm. He's filing suit against the federal government because he says the plan could make him pay more in state taxes and violates the Constitution, partly because the whole thing bypasses Congress. It's just something the White House is doing. It comes about a month after the president said he'd cancel $10,000 in federal student loans per borrower, which was, of course, a big campaign promise. Monica Alba is joining us now. Mon, it's not altogether surprising there is legal action now against the White House. That had been something that came up almost instantly when the White House made this move in the first place. Talk to me about the reaction that you're hearing from White House officials. I have to think that they think they'll be successful, otherwise they wouldn't have done this.
Yeah, White House officials were bracing for these kinds of legal challenges, Hallie. And what they're saying, in effect, responding to this particular lawsuit today is, hey, if you don't want to be the beneficiary of some of this debt relief, you can opt out. So they're talking about 8 million or so people who already have their information on file with the Department of Education who may have this automatic cancellation of the student debt. And that's what this lawsuit is talking about, essentially taxing on that. So they're saying, if you don't want to participate in this, you don't have to. That's the line from the White House press secretary today in response to this. And more broadly, they are putting this in the political terms. They're saying that anyone who wants to really attack this policy is trying to do so for political reasons. And it comes as this major debate that is a long-running one among economic experts comes out in terms of how this is going to be paid for. And of course, the Congressional Budget Office just yesterday did estimate that this is going to be a really huge and hefty price tag. But at the end of the day, the White House is pushing back and saying what they want to do is deliver breathing room to these millions of Americans and borrowers, something, again, that candidate Biden had promised to do. This was something that they're hoping also is going to help those who have been most disproportionately affected by this, a lot of minority borrowers who face a lot more student debt. And as a reminder, this is going to be $10,000 for those who made less than $125,000 on those student loans, but up to $20,000 for those who received Pell Grants. So the White House is feeling, again, pretty optimistic here, feeling like this was something they explored before they announced it. But there are still a ton of questions, Hallie, because the application to apply for this relief still hasn't come out. We're expecting that in the next couple of weeks, and then they're going to be able to assess how this will actually work in practice.
Monica Alba, outside the White House for us. Mon, thank you. And big news today from the Attorney General on the scope of the fentanyl crisis in this country, announcing the DEA has taken more than 10 million fake pills and almost 1,000 pounds of fentanyl powder off the streets in all 50 states since May. It's the aftermath of investigations into nearly 400 cases, some with links to the Mexican cartels responsible for most of the fentanyl in the U.S. And it comes after new warnings from the DEA over so-called rainbow fentanyl pills. You just saw them look like candy. This even looks like sidewalk chalk that they say are being targeted at young people. Coming up, a New Mexico DA says more people could face charges in that Rust movie set shooting, including maybe Alec Baldwin. We're live with the latest on that investigation, an update you should hear. Plus, Shakira Well, she's got to go to trial in Spain. How much time prosecutors want her to spend behind bars and why in our 5 things. A bunch of students across Virginia walking out of school today. What it means for the fight for trans rights in our 5 things. So let's get you there. The things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, starting with some breaking news. We are just now getting results on the sham referendums in Ukraine. And it should not surprise you that 4 regions in the east, including Donetsk and Kherson, are voting to join Russia. Again, these are elections that are basically fake. These results are not real, according to the West, which again is calling this a sham. Russian state media even says 99% of Donetsk voted in favor of joining Russia. Again, the last day of voting here, they've already said they wouldn't recognize the outcome of these votes. Number 2, Vice President Kamala Harris in Tokyo today for the state funeral for former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. He was assassinated while campaigning in July. We're also learning later this week the VP will go to the demilitarized zone separating North and South Korea. Number 3, Shakira, she has been ordered to go to trial on tax fraud charges in Spain. A few years ago, Spanish prosecutors accused her of not paying about $14 million in income tax between 2012 and 2014. They're asking for an 8-year prison sentence. Shakira denies doing anything wrong. She rejected a deal with officials to avoid going to trial. We'll keep an eye on the date for that. Number 4, rescuers in Nepal are searching for a famous U.S. ski climber, Hillary Nelson, missing near the peak of the world's 8th highest mountain yesterday. She was apparently skiing down from the summit when she fell into a gap. An avalanche at a lower elevation yesterday also hurt several climbers and killed a guy. Number 5, students walking out of classrooms across Virginia today in protest of a new policy proposed by Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin that would limit trans rights in schools. It would mean that, for example, gender could only be acknowledged with parent approval. The governor's spokesperson says while students exercise their free speech today, we'd note these policies state students should be treated with compassion and schools should be free from bullying and harassment. I talked with one high school sophomore, a student organizer. Here's what she told me.
I really think that we got the message across that we wanted to, which is Virginia students are not behind these proposed guidelines.
To news out west now, where Alec Baldwin could be criminally charged in the shooting on the Rust movie set that killed cinematographer Halyna Hutchins. This is according to the Santa Fe district attorney. We're finding out about this from a request to the state for more money to cover the costs if prosecutors decide to charge Baldwin and possibly 3 other people, too. A document attached to this request for money even says one of the possible defendants is well-known movie actor, the guy you see on your screen, Mr. Baldwin, so it could be a celebrity trial. This investigation has been happening for nearly a year. You remember that Hutchins was shot last October when Baldwin practiced drawing a gun. He'd been told apparently that it didn't have live ammunition, but it went off, killing her and hurting the movie's director. Baldwin has repeatedly said he's not to blame. Miguel Almaguer is joining us now. And this is really, I think, the first significant update that we're getting in months, because for a while we knew the criminal charges were possible, but now this DA is looking for like actual money to cover possible trials. How significant is this?
Well, Hallie, it's a clear indication that the district attorney is moving towards criminal charges, though the exact charges, what they would be and who could potentially be charged is not clearly defined. As you point out, the DA is requesting money for up to 4 criminal trials, and she's made it clear that those trials could include homicide statutes. Though through the course of the investigation, authorities have questioned several people who were responsible for safety on set. Dave Halls was the assistant director who handed Alec Baldwin the loaded gun and declared it was safe before it was fired. Hannah Gutierrez-Reed was the armorer on the set of Rust. It was her job to ensure gun safety and the person in charge of securing the guns and dummy rounds on the set. And of course, Alec Baldwin, who was holding the gun when it was fired. Safety experts say he should have known not to handle the weapon during what was just a rehearsal and that he should have never pointed the gun at anyone on the set, though he maintains he never pulled the trigger, just cocked the gun back and released the hammer. Here's what the DA told county officials during a Zoom call.
It's become apparent that we will be potentially charging between 1 and 4 people with criminal charges. And with that, and each of those charges will probably include some variation of our homicide statute.
Now we should learn what those criminal charges are in just a few days, Hallie.
What's so interesting about this particular case, too, Miguel, is it was high profile from the second that it happened. It's hard to believe that next month is going to be a year since that shooting. I know you've been covering this from the very beginning. How should we understand the context if, in fact, the prosecutor was to bring a case like this?
Well, certainly we know at this point that Alec Baldwin fired the weapon or was holding the weapon when it went off. He's given multiple interviews, including a detailed sit down over how the gun was fired and who he believes is to blame. Now, all of that could become evidence in a potential criminal case. Baldwin has steadfastly denied any responsibility and said it was other people's jobs on the set to ensure guns were always safe on the set. And of course, live ammunition is not allowed on any movie set. That's a big ongoing question here. Now, Baldwin is the highest profile person in this investigation, and he could face criminal charges. We should find out how that plays out very soon.
We know that Hutchins' family had sued Alec Baldwin. Have we heard anything else from them lately or recently, Miguel? What's the update there?
Yeah, you're right. Her family has sued in civil court, so have others who were on the set. Now, Hutchins' family has said there was serious missteps on set and that someone needs to be held accountable, but they've said very little since filing their civil suit. No doubt they've been in contact with the district attorney who is getting close to making an announcement about potential criminal charges. It would be likely that they've been kind of, talked to about this before it happened, so they are probably in the loop there too, Hallie.
Even just informally, it's a good point. Miguel Almaguer live for us there out in L.A. Miguel, it's really good to see you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Still to come. The Biden administration thinks Americans' diets could be deadly, so the White House wants to do something about it. We'll talk about the steps they're taking at the first big White House meeting on food in like 50 years, what it means for your labels. We'll be right back. A reaction you might not expect from a state attorney general when somebody came to serve him a subpoena. We have that coming up in the local. But first, the White House is looking to make some of the biggest changes in more than 50 years in how all of us eat and shop for food. Something that includes putting nutrition labels right on the front of food packages, okay, not on the back anymore. Adding star ratings or like maybe traffic light schemes, green, red, yellow, to make sure people don't miss some important information. It's all part of the president's pledge to get us to eat healthier and to end hunger and food insecurity by 2030. It's all going to be talked about at a hunger summit starting tomorrow. The first one since 1969, okay? This is decades in the making. The first conference under former President Nixon led to the creation of programs like food stamps and child nutrition assistance. Now, 53 years later, the White House wants to introduce fresh produce prescription programs, expand school meals to all kids, and a whole lot more. Dr. Natalie Azar is joining us now. And when we say sweeping, Dr. Natalie, we really do mean sweeping, right? Talk us through the significance of the moves that the White House is proposing, because I'll tell you, it would change the way that I look at groceries at the store. It would change the way all of us do.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, Hallie, one of the biggest changes that they're thinking about making is putting, labels on the front of packages as opposed to on the back. Because if you see it, sort of glaring when you look at something that you're about to buy, you might be less likely to purchase it if you're in the red zone, let's say. And this is based on evidence in other countries that when they've done this, that it has moved the needle a little bit. And the changes are small. But, I think we're going to see, or we're going to anticipate sort of a generational shift here. This is, as you said, I mean, in the lead, there is a lot more to this. I would say that it's extraordinarily ambitious, but I certainly applaud them for trying. It's definitely something that we need to be doing in this country.
Is it, and I don't know how to phrase this without putting you in a tough spot, but because my question would be, is it overly ambitious? In other words, could the timeline match the goals here?
So I think by 2030, he wants the idea is to reduce the number of diet-related illnesses, reduce hunger or eliminate hunger. Yeah, that I'm not so sure that that's going to happen, unfortunately, Hallie. You can see here, this is just an example of all the things that they're trying to do from so many different, parts of or I should say, like the whole puzzle that's moving, right? Look at the different industries. There's going to be federal. There's going to be on the commercial side, on the consumer side. There's a lot of different things that have to happen here. But suffice it to say, it's important. I mean, overweight and obesity isn't just a problem for adults. 1 in 4 kids has prediabetes, as well as overweight and obesity. So it's something that obviously is important for all of us.
You brought up, so we showed that graphic, food is medicine. That's kind of the way that they're framing this here. And you talk about the impacts of bad diets, basically. The Biden administration's put in some of the blame on ultra-processed foods. You look at the stats, diet-related deaths outrank deaths from smoking. Nearly 900 deaths a day from heart disease are linked to poor diet, but there is still the reality that, especially in this country, some people don't like to be told what to eat or how to eat. They want to make these decisions for themselves. I'm sure you see that as a doctor with patients. How does the White House navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Remember what happened with Bloomberg with the sodas and everything?
Sure.
Right. You know, and I remember when that happened, and I thought to myself, yeah, I get the argument that you can't tell me what to put in my body, but then when I develop type 2 diabetes and obesity and I need my knee replaced and everything, then I'm coming knocking on your door, right, for help. And so I think there's a definite fine line between, you know, federal overreach and somebody's, you know, autonomy and the ability to make these decisions for themselves. But it really is, you know, at an individual level, I think it's really difficult. At a population level, it's definitely something that needs to happen, Hallie. You know, I still think back to medical school. I was in medical school in the early 1990s. We had zero instruction and education on nutrition. And now I'm sure many of us wish that we had a nutrition degree because it is so important. And a healthy lifestyle just impacts us in so many numerous ways that are even too numerous to even talk about. But it's just something that we overlooked in this country for many, many decades too long.
We'll see how tomorrow goes. Just the start, it sounds like. Dr. Natalie Azar, thank you so much. Coming up, the Florida governor, Ron DeSantis, holding a news conference as Hurricane Ian gets closer. You're looking at it. We're going to take you there live. We'll have an update coming up. Plus, air travel, you know, has been a huge pain for a lot of us, including for the folks who help us get to where we're going. We'll talk about why some flight attendants were out demonstrating in force today. Plus, check out this busted-up Porsche. An NFL star was driving it. We got more on his condition in the local. Got some breaking news with an update now on Hurricane Ian from Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. You see him standing behind the podium there on the left side of your screen. This news conference now with the storm getting closer. And he's talking about the latest models, which he says have the storm striking right between Charlotte and Sarasota counties. And now that some counties on the east coast of the state could see some tropical storm force winds. Listen to what he just said.
We can rebuild property, we can fix infrastructure, you can fix your home. You don't get a mulligan when your personal safety is at risk.
You sure don't get a mulligan, as Ellison Barber, live for us in Tampa, knows. What else are we hearing from the governor? What else are we hearing from folks on the ground, Ellison?
Yeah, so the governor just explaining that it appears this hurricane, based on the latest models, is going to arrive in Florida a little bit earlier than expected. He says that it will make landfall in this state tomorrow night, Wednesday night. He says they're expecting it now to exit the state maybe around Friday. But it's not just going to be this side of Florida that gets hit, the western side. They say it is going to exit on the eastern side of the state, kind of up near Flagler, St. Augustine area. And in that process, as it's moving, he says while it's coming here a little quicker than we expected, it is going to slow down a little bit once it is actually over Florida, but continue just pounding the state with rain, and that all of that is going to impact almost every single part of this state. They are telling people now to keep preparing as best you can. Time is running out, he says, but there is still time for people to prepare and evacuate if needed. Right now, he says there are around 2.5 million Floridians, people living in this state, under some sort of evacuation order. They're working with the Department of Transportation here, trying to open up additional lanes to help people evacuate. But what we know right now is it looks like this storm is going to make landfall in this state earlier, but then at some point it's going to slow down, and the impacts from storm surge to just flooding, because there is so much rain, really could have just wide-reaching impacts. Hallie?
You're so right. Ellison, thank you. Again, stay safe. Appreciate it. You know the storm is going to snarl air travel. Obviously, we talked about how the big airports in the Tampa area are shut down. It was a different kind of air travel thing going down today, with flight attendants for United and Southwest holding demonstrations at nearly 24 airports today, protesting contract negotiations, staffing shortages, flight cancellations. And yes, listen, nobody likes when your flight gets canceled. That's a hassle for you, but they're also a nightmare for flight attendants too. They can spend hours not getting paid, waiting to be rescheduled. Some of them say they've been forced to sleep on cots in airports when hotels are overbooked. It's coming as today in San Francisco, airport food service workers, the cashiers, the baristas, the cooks, they're on strike over staffing and pay issues, which shut down most of the airport's concessions there. Comes as a lot of folks might be thinking about holiday travel plans. Tom Costello is joining us now. I sure am thinking about holiday travel plans. The protests today didn't affect air travel, right? Like that wasn't an impact thing, what we're talking about, these flight attendants. But I wonder how much of a sign of stress this is, right, for the airline industry that they've got going on.
What does that say?
Did you bring your own graphic? Tom Costello bringing his own graphic.
I'm like the great...
It says 56,000 flights. You have a team that can make this for you.
56,000 flights canceled from Memorial Day to Labor Day. 56,000 right there. Canceled. Do I have it right side up? From Memorial Day to Labor Day.
A lot of flights.
So that's a lot of flights. Now, listen, the airlines and their unions are going back and forth blaming. They blame the air traffic controllers. They blame the staff shortages because, yes, there still is a staff problem everywhere in every industry in the country. They are upset about low wages. They're upset about they don't have enough. You name it. They've been blaming each other back and forth. But you can imagine what it's like to be a flight attendant. We've talked about pilot issues all summer.
It is, I'm sure.
And there was yet another plane that had to divert today because there was an unruly, violent passenger on board. Miami to L.A., they diverted to El Paso. And so, yeah, you can understand the frustration that has built with specifically Southwest flight attendants, United flight attendants and American flight attendants. I've heard a lot of them complaining over the last few months, and today they're on the picket line, not the strike line.
That's an important distinction. That's right. It's not a strike, it's a demonstration. The other piece of this, too, the backdrop to some of this, is what's happening with the Department of Justice and this new trial starting today with American and JetBlue, who basically, if I understand it correctly, kind of got together in the Northeast and were like, hey, we can kind of share codes and share airlines, right?
What kind of a relationship would you call a situation when you can book a flight on another carrier and you can see what the flight's schedules are, and they're completely intermixed? What would you call that? Would you call that a merger?
Well, the DOJ might.
See, the airlines say, oh, no, this is an alliance. It's not a merger. But the DOJ says, come on, this is a merger, and it's happening between American and JetBlue, specifically in the Northeast.
Is it everywhere or just in the Northeast?
New York is the bottom line. They say, well, we need this alliance to compete with the big guys, as if American isn't a big guy. They want to compete with United and Delta, right? But guess what? The American JetBlue alliance has 34% market share already in the New York area. They have more market share than the competition up there. 31%, pardon me. So that's why the DOJ is taking this relationship, this alliance, to court, saying, no, that's illegal. They're trying to press this hard. It's happening just as JetBlue is trying to buy Spirit Airlines. Right. And if they did that,
which is a merger,
that would be a merger, a $4 billion merger, and that would create the country's 5th biggest airline. So you can see why the Justice Department is concerned about the lack of what would be a loss of competition, and therefore airfares could go up even more. And because I know you, Hallie Jackson, and you're going to ask me, tell me, Tom, what are the airfares looking like for this holiday season, right? Ask me.
What are they looking like for the holiday season?
Good.
I'm merely your puppet. Pull my strings, please.
So listen to this. We're up the highest in 5 years, okay? If you're going to be traveling...
For Thanksgiving and Christmas?
Thanksgiving and Christmas. So we're looking at $350 to fly over Thanksgiving, $463 over Christmas. Sorry I took so much of your time.
I booked my Thanksgiving travel, and it was a real moment. I mean, it's
a moment.
No joke. Sticker shock, you know? It's happening. Yes, of course.
Okay.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it. Lots going on in the air industry today.
You bet. Love it. All right.
NBC News Today, exclusively resurfacing some explosive comments from the Republican candidate for governor in Pennsylvania, specifically on abortion. It's this scoop that came during a 2019 radio interview that NBC found when Mastriano was a state senator. Doug Mastriano, he's the candidate. At the time, he said women, some of them, should be charged with murder if they violated an abortion ban that he proposed. Listen.
Would that woman who decided to have an abortion, which would be considered an illegal abortion, be charged with murder?
Okay, let's go back to the basic question there. Is that a human being? Is that a little boy or girl? If it is, it deserves equal protection under the law.
So you're saying yes?
Yes, I am.
You have to remember how much of a factor the fight for abortion rights is in this Pennsylvania race, the governor's race, the Senate race, et cetera, after the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade. You remember these protests? We're seeing them on screen here. Whoever wins between Mastriano and State Attorney General Joel Shapiro could help shape abortion access in PA. Alan Smith is the reporter behind that scoop. It is his exclusive reporting. And Alan, talk about sort of what you uncovered and what we're hearing from Mastriano's campaign, who by my count still has not responded to NBC News yet, right?
He has not responded to NBC News. And just to kind of put this into context, Hallie, I'm sure you remember 2016 presidential campaign when then candidate Donald Trump suggested in an interview that women should be punished if they have abortions. Now, at the time,
he walked it back within like 10 minutes, right?
Yes. Like at the time, Republicans widely condemned this. Anti-abortion activists said, this is absolutely not how we talk about the issue. This isn't what we're advocating for. Often the position is, physicians should be, held to criminal account for performing abortions. Now, Mastriano took this even a step further than what Trump said in 2016, which was that women should actually be charged with murder under legislation that he sought to pass in 2019. Ultimately didn't pass in the State House, but it's the kind of legislation that he would be interested in signing if he wins the election this fall. He just said as recently as last week that he would be interested in signing a so-called heartbeat bill, which was the kind of legislation he was discussing at the time in 2019 when he made these remarks that under that bill, he thinks women should be charged with murder if they go through with a illegal abortion under that bill.
He just yesterday, I think, although his campaign has not responded to our request for comment, just yesterday was out and called his views on abortion irrelevant, essentially, as governor, basically saying it's up to the state legislative body to determine what the law would be. All of this, as we talk about the backdrop here, Alan, abortion rights, abortion access is a frontline issue for many Pennsylvanians.
Absolutely. And, Mastriano says his views are irrelevant, but the reality is the Pennsylvania State House has been for years under Republican control and is likely to still be under Republican control after this fall's election. So he might, believe his views are irrelevant, but the legislature will have the ability to pass new restrictions that Mastriano has expressed interest in signing. Shapiro, the Democratic candidate, Attorney General Josh Shapiro, has contrasted, obviously, with Mastriano, saying that he supports current state law, which allows for abortions up to 24 weeks with exceptions after that. And this has really been one of those states where you've seen abortion as one of those frontline kind of decisive issues.
Alan, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Hallie.
NBC News covers hundreds of stories every day. And because you couldn't possibly read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. From our Southeast Bureau, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton apparently ran out of his house and jumped into a truck to avoid being served a subpoena in an abortion access case. That's according to the person who tried to deliver the subpoena in his sworn affidavit. A federal judge threw out the subpoena today. Paxton on Twitter said he was showing concern for his family and later said the process server was lucky the whole thing didn't escalate more. From our Midwest Bureau, check out this Porsche. Officials in Ohio say it was Cleveland Browns star defensive end Myles Garrett who was behind the wheel after leaving a practice facility. The car flipped over on a road that was sort of rural. Garrett was not seriously hurt. He's been released from the hospital. He and a woman he was with were wearing seatbelts. Police say alcohol and drugs are not suspected to have been a factor in the crash. And from our West Coast Bureau, folks who live in California are really feeling gas prices, right? They're up about $2 more than the national average, according to AAA. They're paying $5.80. The war in Ukraine, COVID, even hurricane season, all playing a part in those higher prices, which for 99 days nationally, at least, for nearly 100 days, have been ticking downward. Boy, another busy one. We're going to have more for you here tomorrow, same time, same place. We're so glad that you join us here on NBC News Now. More coverage picks up right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.